So, in the wake of these Black Lives Matter protests, I want to talk a little bit about why I support Black Lives Matter because I didn't always, and I'm ashamed of that. See, in 2016, I was I was looking at the news. I was seeing everybody writing about Freddie Gray, and I was like, well, who cares? Freddie Gray was a criminal, and bad things happen to criminals. But my dad asked me, "Would you say that about your brother?" Pictured in the thumbnail. And I said, "Of course not. Of course I wouldn't. But Mike is disabled. Like, who would do that to like a disabled person? Like, he's disabled, he's not a criminal. What's the issue there?" But the thing is that Freddie was disabled, and it's been documented. Some disabilities come from birth and some come from environmental factors. And Freddie lived in a house that was coated with lead paint. It was infamous. Now, if a child has 5 micrograms per deciliter of lead in their blood, it can cause decreased IQ, lack of cognition, and behavioral problems. But at 2 years old, Freddie had 37 micrograms of a neurotoxin in his blood, and that's over 7 times the amount that is harmful. And that can cause nerve damage. Like, his house was poisoning him. And it pisses me off because Black children are 3 times more likely to have elevated levels of lead. And lead toxicity is how racism gets into the body. So Freddie was disabled. But I guess one would say, well, that's not a death sentence. Well, let's go back to my brother for a minute. All right? Arundel County, which is where we live, has behavioral specialists. They have free speech and occupational therapists. And my brother, he loved his speech therapist. And he learned to communicate better because of her. He can communicate more about his emotions when he feels uncomfortable. But on the other hand, Baltimore faces repeated lawsuits for failing to educate disabled children well. Well, 80% of local funding for schools comes from property taxes. And you get a lot more property taxes from a $1 million McMansion in Anne Arundel County than you do from a beat up row house in Baltimore County. And why do you think it's based on property taxes and not anything else? It's just bad. It's just bad. Now, at my high school, disabled students would sell cookies at lunch for vocational training, and everybody loved it. And the students got the training they needed to like become a cashier in a grocery store. They learned how to make change. It was great. Everybody supported it. But Freddie didn't receive any vocational training at his school. He had to learn to lay bricks in prison. That's where he got his vocational training. A psychologist who interviewed Freddie during a lead poisoning trial said that he wouldn't want Freddie to plan the walkway at his house. So the opportunities just really weren't there. So I can't really call Freddie a criminal if he had no other option. I guess you could say for a neurotypical person, and it wouldn't be a good argument, but you could say that. But like for Freddie, when the jobs for disabled people are, you need a lot more support, and Freddie didn't have that support. So on to his death, which is honestly just, it shatters me. Because my brother used to run away from situations when he felt overwhelmed. He would just, like, if someone was talking too loud, he would like start yelling, and he would run out of the room immediately. And I don't know. There's no way of knowing, but maybe that's what was happening to Freddie. And he couldn't communicate his feelings. My brother received communication training to effectively handle his emotions, and Freddie did not. Now, when we finally go back to school, my brother is going to receive vocational training. His special ed teachers are going to help him find a job out of high school that's going to meet his needs. But Freddie, he got none of that. It's not easy to sever a spinal cord. when I think of that like happening to my brother, because he was just assumed to be a criminal from the start without any evidence to suggest that, it fucks me right up. It fucks me right up. Because the police didn't care enough to understand him, to understand that he was probably confused and scared and not guilty of a crime. They need to be trained for those kinds of situations. They need to be trained to understand that not everybody has the same level of understanding of what's going on, the same understanding of other people, because we we need to we need to be cognizant of the most vulnerable among us. And I don't know, like, why that would ever be something controversial to say. Being disabled while black is not a crime. Running while black is not a crime. And like, but for the grace of God, that could have been my brother. It could have. And Black Lives Matter.